with the new Stephen King adaptation Firestarter out in theaters. We're going to take a look at both that one and the original 1984 version starring Drew Barrymore and see if either of them are even good. Let's talk Firestarter. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my spoiler-free review for the new film Firestarter. It is available in theaters right now, or if you have Peacock, you can watch it there for free. And they also have the original, by the way. That's how I watched the 1984 version as well. So they have both Firestarters on there, and I think they might even have like the miniseries TV show that Sci-Fi did years ago as well on there. That would make sense because I think they're all owned by the same company. But anyway, specifically, we're going to talk about the 1984 Firestarter and the 2022 Firestarter. I don't know how Stephen King feels about the new one, but I know he was very vocal about not really liking the original version. You know, he's always pretty vocal about which of his adaptations he likes and which ones he does not care for. That was one that he did not feel worked. Before we launch into these reviews, though, I do want to welcome you to Dan Reviews It. Thank you for finding this video. We've got some great subscribers here. We're up to 950. I would love to get to 1,000, so please consider subscribing down below there, or click that notification bell as well when you do, because you'll get all my notifications for new movie and TV review videos. We do both new and old stuff here on the channel, and always some exciting stuff. So, all right, so like I said, Stephen King was very vocal about not caring for this 1984 version. I have seen very few of the Stephen King horror adaptations from the old days. You know, when I was a kid, I was not allowed to watch horror movies. And so, you know, a few years ago when they did the Carrie remake, about 8 or 9 years ago now, I did go back and watch the original Carrie. I think that still holds up very well. I thought the new one was fine, but I thought the old one still held up fine. And then I watched Christine a few years ago as well. When I was doing the old Film Fanatic show, we did like a top 5 inanimate horror objects. And so I thought, all right, well, let's watch a few of these classics that I've missed. And so I saw Christine. I thought that was pretty good as well. You know, for an 80s horror. And that's it. Other than that, I mean, I've seen Stand By Me. I've seen Shawshank Redemption. So some of the more dramatic stuff. But yeah, in terms of horror, I think that's probably it for the 80s and 90s. Oh, no, I saw The Dead Zone on TV, like, when I was a teenager. I don't really remember it. I know Christopher Walken was in it. That's about all I got. So anyway, so my knowledge on the Stephen King horror films is not up to code, really. But, look, the guy did not like it. And there could be reasons why, which we'll get into. But essentially, the stories are the same for these movies, you know, which makes sense. They're based on the book. I think each one sort of tackles a different aspect of the book, let's say. I mentioned Drew Barrymore was in the original. And the movie's about a girl who develops pyrokinesis, which is basically starting fires with her mind. And then there's this agency in the government called the Shop, who was testing the kid's parents earlier, and her father in the original is played by David Keith. Zac Efron takes over the role in the new version, and they have powers of their own as well, but not to this same degree. They're more just sort of mental powers and hypnotic type powers. And the gal in the new version is Ryan Kira Armstrong. Unfamiliar with her. She hasn't really done a whole lot, so this is one of her first. Now, by the time Drew Barrymore did this, she was already in E.T., so she was already, you know, a pretty big star. And so, okay, let's talk first about the original. Like I said, you know, the plots are basically the same. This girl has these powers. The government is trying to get a hold of her, figure out what to do with her, and as well capture the father. You know, because obviously he's gonna talk about his experience there as well. And in both cases, they sort of meet someone along the way that wants to help them. So we've got that sort of as the general theme for both movies in the plot. So back to 1984. So first of all, John Carpenter was supposed to direct this movie. And ironically, because of the box office disappointment of The Thing, which is now, you know, regarded as an absolute sci-fi classic, he got fired from the film. Now, he did end up, I think he directed Christine. I could be wrong on that. But so he still got involved with one of the Stephen King things. But no, the studio said, nah, you're out. We're going to get this other guy, Mark L. Lester, who, basically does not have a huge track record in big time movies. He's done, more like B horror type things. And what's funny about this is, David Keith, I know sort of in more present day. I haven't seen a lot of 80s David Keith movies, but to me, he looks a lot like 80s Kurt Russell. So when the movie first started, I was like, oh, is that Kurt Russell? Then I was like, oh, no, I looked up the cast list. But it's ironic because, of course, Kurt Russell was in the thing. So obviously they had a certain set in mind for this movie, and maybe did not pan out. So talking about the positives of this movie, I do think that the soundtrack is very eerie. It's from this group called Tangerine Dream, who basically does instrumental numbers. Not always for soundtracks, they have just regular albums too, but they're sort of like a jazz fusion type band. But in true 80s fashion, there's a lot of like synth in here, but I think it's pretty effective for what the movie does. It's also nice as a time capsule because this was the first film of dozens, and still to this day, to be filmed on this place called Orton Plantation, that producer Frank Capra Jr., yes, son of, the famous Frank Capra, he was one of the producers on this, and he found this place, and they filmed a lot of things here, from the Yaya Sisterhood, Walk to Remember, Dawson's Creek. So a lot of things in the next, 30 years were filmed at this place. So it's sort of nice for that, as a little time capsule. Also, just the product placement and stuff. At one point they're moving because they have to, get out of town, and they're packing in this wheat and raisin Chex cereal box, like a big box full of them. I never heard of wheat or raisin Chex. It sounds horrible, but they kept like showing this box. I was like, okay. But so like as a time capsule, it's vaguely interesting, I guess. And then the best part of the movie is Drew Barrymore herself. I mean, she is such an unbelievable natural talent. And we knew this from E.T., of course. But, that was more of a sci-fi and family movie. This is an R-rated horror flick. So she's got to do a lot of screaming. Yeah, she did a little screaming in E.T., where she first met E.T. But, here she's got to do a lot of horror screaming against things that aren't there. Oh, we're going to put the fire in later or whatever. Now, sometimes, well, I guess I shouldn't say that because most of it, I guess, was practical effects. Computers were not at the time. But I know, like, for some of the bigger set pieces, they used models later on. But yeah, I guess in the terms of, certain things lighting on fire, I guess that was real. But anyway, she had to do a lot of screaming, a lot of, emoting, and I think she nailed it. So, I can see why she was such an in-demand young actress. So, okay, that's about where the positives end, I would say. Everyone else is average to below. I mean, David Keith is fine. And some of the older people in the cast, are fine. Like Martin Sheen, for example, looking very, very young here. But Martin Sheen, George C. Scott, I mean, they're all like fine, but I think it's more of a case of, the script is not very exciting, and so they do okay with what they've got, but this is really the Drew Barrymore show, and everyone else is completely ancillary. You could have had literally anyone playing those roles, and it wouldn't have made, I think, much of a difference at the end of the day. There's no real character development here either. I mean, Drew Barrymore gets a little bit. And by the way, they're named the same thing in both movies, so I guess I should just say the character names here. But Charlene McGee is the character. But so Charlie is the only one that really gets any sort of character development here. Everybody else is so bland, and then it's kind of like rinse and repeat here. The girl causes fires, people are chasing her. People get injured, and then we repeat. The next group of people to chase her. Okay, now they're going to get injured. The guy that she meets and sort of wants to help her, there's a couple of them really, but, they're interesting enough. I wouldn't say they get any character development, but they're okay. But so look, I can see why Stephen King was not a fan of this version. It did not really have a lot to offer. Even when, yes, it's dated, sure, but even when compared to other 80s horror movies of that era, I think it would have been a lot better if John Carpenter had been retained to direct it. Because personally, if I'm right that he did direct Christine, I liked Christine better than this. I think it's a little less dated, and I think more things happen in it. There's more sort of action with the characters than just the basic plot A, plot B, plot C, and let's get to all of them and repeat. And this is almost 2 hours. So we get a lot here that they could have been excised. So look, it's not great. It's average, but I think if Drew Barrymore was not in it, this thing would be, definitely more of a waste. All right, and that brings us to the new version, 2022. I'll grade both of these at the end of the video, by the way, to just really compare and contrast here. So, all right, like I mentioned, this new gal, Ryan Kira Armstrong, is one of the people doing this here. And they're talking a lot on the poster and in the previews about how this is a Blumhouse production. And they're the makers of The Invisible Man. All right, well, look, Blumhouse has been the go-to for horror for well over a decade at this point. I mean, they started really with the Paranormal Activity movies, and then they've done, The Purge and the Ouija movies, and all of these other things. They did, they produced the Jordan Peele movies along with Universal. So it's interesting to me that they're tagging The Invisible Man specifically, because it says to me, okay, I think they really knew they had kind of a turd on their hands. They're really hyping up the Jason Blum infused thing here and saying Invisible Man because, The Invisible Man was a movie that universally was loved by everybody, and it was a remake of a classic. If they don't want to put any of their originals up there because they want to remind people, okay, yeah, the original existed, but this one, if you liked Invisible Man, you're gonna really like Firestarter. All right, well, we'll see if that's true. And then, of course, they put, Zac Efron in it. He will drive some people in, I think. And because of his presence, and because we don't really know this girl that's playing Charlie, this is more focused on the father and the dynamic of the father-daughter team. And, okay, how do I, care for this girl with all these powers I can't control? It focuses a lot more on that in this one than in the first one, because the first one, the star power was Drew Barrymore. And look, it's a valid retelling. I didn't mind that they went that path with it, but again, they don't do anything with these characters. I think what they should have learned from the first movie is that we need more character development in these movies. Now, I will say this one is a scant 94 minutes, so I think they realized, okay, we gotta kind of cut down some of the repetition here, and they do. There isn't a lot with the repeating of the scenes, but again, we meet somebody. In this case, it's a female, Latino female, instead of an old white man. But whatever, she's sort of the go-to to try and help these people. All right, but. Through it all, this movie suffers a lot of the same problems of the original without an amazing person playing Charlie. And this girl, Ryan Kira Armstrong, is fine. There's nothing really wrong with her. And they tackle they do like a couple more things in school and with other kids. So they tackle a little bit of the bullying in here. All right, that makes it a little more present day, sure. But a lot of the same problems still exist. And one of the other problems is this is directed again by a relative newcomer, Keith Thomas, who has directed nothing that I've heard of before this. He is going to talk about, he's going to direct this Guillermo del Toro TV show, one episode of this like anthology show coming up. But other than that, he did this movie called Vigil I've never heard of. And that's about it. So we're getting now another new director. So this could be an ongoing problem for this series as well. I will say, as sort of a nod to John Carpenter getting fired off the original, he composed the score for this movie. He's all about the scores now. He doesn't direct much anymore, but like he helped with the Halloween score with the reboots recently. So okay, that's kind of cool. And I will admit, the score is fine, but it is basically Halloween. Like it's a if you didn't tell me it was John Carpenter, I would think, oh, they're ripping off the John Carpenter Halloween thing. So I can't call it original, but it was fine. It served its purpose for the movie. But really, the ending is where this one is really diverging from the original. It is horrible, and it just ends. Like, I thought there was another, and I knew it was a shorter movie, but I thought there was maybe another like 15 or 20 minutes in the movie, not because I thought we didn't take that much time up yet, but I wasn't really paying attention at the time, and story wise it just didn't make sense to end there, and they end it. I mean, it makes sense where it ended, but like the build up to it, it was one big scene, and then boom, little bit of epilogue, roll credits. And it was just really weird. They do the 80s thing. I will say it was kind of funny. They gave like a little nod to 80s movies where, instead of fading to black and giving us credits like every movie these days, they sort of scrolled the credits over the end, scene of whatever, I'm not going to say. But so I thought that was kind of a nice nod. But this movie is awful. So it begs the question, is Firestarter just not one of Stephen King's better books? I don't know. I mean, other than the Drew Barrymore movie, I do never hear it being talked about in like the classic works of King, Carrie, It, all of those old classics, a lot that we've already talked about, Misery. But this one only really ever makes note because Drew Barrymore was in the original. So look, this movie stinks worse than the first one. I guess I wouldn't recommend really either one of them. But and also on Peacock, I will say this, and this is no detriment to the original movie because it, I can't grade it on how it's presented on Peacock. But you watch the original with commercials. That's the only way they have it, and it's fine. But they do too many commercial breaks that are like quick. I would rather have like a regular TV 2.5-minute break. They do like 45 seconds here, and then 10 minutes later, oh, here's a 15-second commercial, back to the movie. It's like, it really breaks it up. It's kind of annoying. But anyway, the original 1984 Firestarter gets a C, and the new 2022 movie gets a D. Easily one of the worst of the year so far. Yeah, not really recommended for either of them, in my opinion. So, all right, that will do it. Thank you for watching, and we'll see everybody next time. Bye.